Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. And this is going to be the astro weather for the week of August 31st through September the 7th, 2025. Major headlines: Mercury is entering into the sign of Virgo, but we've got several other things taking place this week. So I'm excited to get into it with you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Click that bell button below if you want to be alerted as to when I have new videos that are out. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and like this video. Consider sharing and leave me your comments below on how you navigate the week. All right, so a few kind of heads up at the top of the video. Obviously, we're coming into eclipse week. We're going to see a lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 7th. So it's going to be next Sunday, but we're feeling the effects of it all week long. And it's kicking off a 2-week window between the 7th and the 21st, where we're going to see eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. So yes, changes in the air, guys. And if you need some assistance in navigating the next couple of weeks, check out my fall 2025 eclipse webinar. It's over 3 hours long of content, lots of information jam-packed. I have predictions as well as recommendations and rituals and some insights, including tarot for the collective and the 12 rising signs. You guys can find that in the links below in the description, and we'll probably also pin it to my comment section. And as I'm doing a special this month, if you guys in the month of September want to join my level 4 memberships, where you're going to get one reading on one of my live Fridays, you get exclusive members only access to this webinar included in your monthly kind of membership. So you guys can watch it instantly. If you guys want to see that through joining my memberships, check out the community page. Now, we also are going to be having readings on Friday. So we're going to be doing lunar eclipse in Pisces readings. So if you want to know how the eclipse is impacting your chart, come and check it out. Hang out with us on Friday. Eclipse readings are always like crazy. There's a lot of people there. So we'll probably post the link early in the community tab. Pays to be subscribed so that way you can get the alert and make sure you're in the queue for your reading. I'm going to be here at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's going to be 4 p.m. on the Pacific Coast and 7 p.m. on Eastern Coast. We'll be here for a couple hours, and we usually shut it down before we even get into the live. So if you guys want to get a reading, definitely sign up in advance. And that's pretty much it. So let's dive into what's going on this week. There's a lot happening, but I'm excited because I feel like there's definitely a lot of opportunities for growth and change this week. That's how I want you guys to look at the next couple of days. Obviously, the cosmos are really inviting us to kind of enter into a dance of precision, and where really precision is meeting intuition. Now, Mercury is going to be slipping into the analytical earth sign of Virgo, helping all of us really sharpen our minds for detail-oriented tasks. But the building eclipse energy in Pisces later this week is definitely pulling us towards emotional releases and spiritual insights. We're also going to feel some tension from Mars in Libra forming a square to Jupiter in Cancer. And this may potentially amplify conflicts in relationships or overexpansion or being a little overly confident. But thankfully, Jupiter is a part of a trine to the North Node in Pisces, opening faded doors of growth in nurturing and emotional realms. It's also forming a trine to the lunar eclipse in Pisces. So I feel like this is very positive for releasing and letting go, tapping into our intuition, and also healing collectively. So overall, this week's going to feel like it's a time to organize the practical while surrendering to the mystical, balancing logic with faith to navigate the waves of emotions over the next couple of days. Now, the key transits are obviously going to be the spotlight this week is Mercury entering into Virgo. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that transit. And if you guys are wanting more insight on the eclipses, I did put out a lunar eclipse in Pisces preview video, so definitely check that out on my channel. Now, when we look at Mercury in Virgo, I'm actually kind of excited to see this transit because I feel like so much of this is baked into the eclipse cycle. We see lots of aspects with Mercury with both of the eclipses, and we also see that Mercury is going to be dancing with the South Node. It's ruling the Sun. So there's a lot of getting organized in the midst of what feels like eclipse chaos, and surrendering and releasing what's not healthy for us anymore, what's not working for our schedule, what's not working for our habits. I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but I'm definitely feeling it. And I'm trying to be kind of looking at some of these transits more optimistically in terms of some of the change that it's going to kind of bring up. and also not being so self-critical. I think that's going to be some of the themes as well. Now, we are going to see Mercury in Virgo for several weeks long. It looks like this is going to be taking place from September the 2nd through September 18th, 2025. As a reminder, if you guys look down below in the comments, you're going to see all of the dates for not only this week's transits, but also the information about Mercury in Virgo, so you guys can catch that there. You'll also see me go through it on the chart. So if you look up at the chart, you can actually see the dates. I know we've heard a lot of people who have been making requests for dates in the videos and stuff, and we do it when we can, but if we have too many transits going on at one time, I always make sure that it's on the screen and it's in the description, so definitely check that out. But starting on the 2nd this week, we're going to see Mercury enter into Virgo. And Mercury is in its domicile here, which means it's at home. It's pretty comfortable. It can kind of function and get a lot of things done. And Mercury rules themes like communication. It's about intellect, short distance travel, technology, learning, siblings, neighbors, contracts, negotiations, and also like systems. So it's a lot of it's about organization, labeling, kind of getting things in order. And Mercury going through this particular sign, it's going to have our mind on Virgo related topics. So Virgo is kind of the lens that we're looking at Mercury through. And this is a little bit different than when we look at Mercury and Gemini. Virgo obviously is mutable earth, so it's changeable, it's flexible, but it's also a little bit more grounded in this particular sign. And it's going to be focusing on practicality when it comes to service, health, organization, analysis, and obviously our daily routine. So, watering the grass, feeding the pets, walking them, getting our to-do list done, and anything connected to our office space and also our schedules. So what we're going to find during this particular transit is that the core theme is really about refining our thoughts and processes and embracing more efficiency, also using critical thinking and problem solving and letting go of any outdated habits to foster more clarity and productivity and really bring forth, I think, better health. So I think that's going to be part of the effect as well. Now, if you happen to be ruled by Mercury, if you're a Gemini or a Virgo rising, you're going to be feeling the effects of this transit a little bit more. But I do think everybody is going to benefit from this transit because we are going to be seeing that there will be some aspects taking place with the South Node. So you can kind of clean up a certain area of your life throughout the next couple of weeks. Now, the eclipses are going to be amplifying that as well. So you definitely want to take a look at your chart, hone in on which house Virgo is. That's where you're going to be seeing a lot of the action. Now, Mercury's connection, it is going to be the ruler and the dispositor for the next couple of weeks of the Sun, the South Node, as well as Uranus in Gemini, because Mercury rules all of these particular things. So there is like a reorganization and orientation going on in like the Virgo area of our chart. A lot of it's releasing things that are old or outdated. And what we are also working off of is innovative new developments, technology, apps, AI, communication, learning, and traveling to become a lot more productive and efficient. So we want to be kind of rolling with the punches, I think, with Uranus in Gemini. Right off the bat, you will see a square, but Uranus is still in a trine to Pluto and Aquarius, so it can actually really help us move towards our goals, I think, in a much faster, kind of uptick fashion, and also communicate and kind of get around a little bit better. So great for like schedule hacking or anything connecting to new organizational skills or new apps, and just efficiency, I think, is going to be the key to get stuff done in a much more productive manner. Now, I think with that connection to the Sun and the South Node, something you want to think about is that, as Mercury ingresses into Virgo, it's really aligning closely with the Sun, which is also there. So the South Node and the Sun is going to be emphasizing over the next couple of weeks some kind of karmic release. And the setup is obviously highlighting themes that's about purging through the South Node old mental patterns, and also revisiting past lessons in communication. And we will see at some point throughout this transit that there's going to be a cazimi where the Sun and Mercury are going to kind of conjunct, and we'll see this as like an illuminating moment right around the 13th of September. And obviously this is kind of like that rebirth of Mercury where insights kind of burn away any illusions that have been tied to perfectionism or overanalysis from previous cycles. So I'll go over all of the transit dates, and also I'll talk to you guys about where Mercury is kind of transiting through Virgo for the 12 rising signs if you stay tuned to the end of the video. Now, what to watch for, I think, because the South Node is there and it can kind of feel like a trap. is that there's definitely this tendency to be a little bit more overly critical of ourselves, of other people. We can also find that we are like really getting stuck in old, negative habits or patterns, particularly in how we work, whether it's overworking, overstressing, overeating, over smoking, over drinking. All of these things can kind of be coming up, and we're looking for new innovative ways to work through that. And as we're going through some of the conjunctions with Mercury and the South Node, I think that we can find that there can be anxiety that can kind of be coming up for us because of, perfectionist kind of tendencies. So there can also be some tendencies for miscommunication if some of the details are overshadowed by the bigger picture. And we may see some health or work-related glitches if our routines get disrupted. So we'll kind of see that, health stuff can come up, or that there can be some delays or some setbacks or some challenges. Obviously, we will see Mercury. That's an aspect to Saturn along the way. Now, globally, I think that we might find that there is much more heightened focus on health initiatives and anything kind of connected to workplace reforms and detailed news that's kind of coming out about job numbers or changes going on with government jobs, changes also going on with health routines and habits or the healthcare kind of system. And we might also see some breakthroughs in tech or the medical field. But obviously, the transit's going to wrap up with Saturn coming into an opposition with Mercury in Virgo, and that'll also be highlighted by the solar eclipse in Virgo, which will oppose Saturn in Pisces. So I'm hoping that it manifests as calls for accountability and kind of exposure of some of the scandals that's been happening in some of these fields. One can hope. Now, personally, I think this is going to manifest for a lot of us as a transit that will really sharpen our, mental abilities, help us get organized. And I think it's really great for, refined kind of like detail-oriented projects. So if you're editing something, if you're needing to refine something, maybe you need to do some research, or maybe you just feel like you need to streamline your daily life, right? You need to, straighten up your schedule, organize your office, get back to the gym, make your doctor's appointments and keep them. I think it can be really beneficial for that, but it can also really trigger for a lot of people a need to release some kind of outdated belief because Mercury is very mental. And this is also going to be leading us over the next couple of weeks, I think, to clear, decision-making and improved efficiency when it comes to our work, our health, as well as our habits. Now, a lot of the transits that I'm going to be going over now are going to be over the next couple of weeks. Now, some of them you will see in the immediate next week, but some of them are going to be a little bit later. So I recommend just kind of making a note of some of this stuff in your calendars. If you guys are interested, I do sell personalized digital calendars that you can kind of download right into your phone. It is adaptable with Apple Calendar and also your Google Calendar, and you get alerts when these transits are happening in real time for your natal chart. So definitely check that out. You can find that in the links below. It's an easy way to have your transits at the tip of your fingers. And we're going to be starting with September the 2nd when Mercury enters into Virgo. So I think we're going to feel the shift personally. I think it's impossible not to because we are going to be feeling that, Mercury is at home in this particular sign. So it'll be first thing in the morning on September 2nd, Mercury enters into Virgo. Now, something that we're going to feel also right off the bat, other than that shift where, okay, now Mercury's in its home sign, so it's going to be amplifying, getting organized, getting things done, more practical communication, focusing on efficiency, and also organizing and refining things. Okay, that's going to be the key in one particular area of your chart. But from the second on into the third, Mercury is starting to come into a square with Uranus in Gemini, okay? So, and Uranus is connected to Mercury because it's in a mercurial sign. So then what you will see is as we're kind of getting into, the third, there is going to be a lot of like mental stress and tension. Positive, I think, is that on the second, we're moving from where Mercury has been in Leo, which is very kind of bold, and it's very much connected to kind of like, flamboyance and creativity, to now kind of, okay, we're winding down, we're kind of getting more practical and more so grounded. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going back to school, or my kids are going back to school, or I'm preparing for, kind of the fall season, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, and starting to kind of structure and plan out the next couple of months. So it's going to help you guys do that. The challenge is going to be on the third, and maybe you guys, if you're astrologically sensitive, you're kind of feeling it off the bat, but On the 3rd, Mercury will square Uranus in Gemini. All right. And so this will be at a 1. So it's going to be about the things that we do impulsively, the things that we say impulsively, the things that shift very suddenly. And obviously, Mercury is making a lot of other aspects as well. It's not just squaring Uranus where there could be some mental tension. It's also going to be in conjunct Neptune in Aries, where this is a quincunx. So it's kind of like sandpaper. Something's rubbing us the wrong way. And it's hard to get clarity with Neptune, especially when it's retrograde. And this is very much tied to the health of our bodies. Aries can be about what we do first thing in the morning, or, Neptune can be about our vision or lack of clarity or awareness, self-awareness in particular. And Mercury is also coming into an inconjunct or a quincunx with Pluto. So this is going to be considered a yod. And it's basically saying Mercury is the focal point. So it's like, hey, this Mercury health-related stuff, organizational stuff, very important. And it's going to definitely change and transform the collective. And it's also going to kind of peel back some of the fogs and the illusion where we have been under some preconceived belief about something. And obviously that is coming from some kind of shocking or unexpected sudden pivot or change of news, media, plans, health. Guys, all of September is going to be just jaw-dropping health news, okay? Across the board. You can see it in the eclipses. You can see it with some of the Mercury aspects. And I think that this is a really interesting aspect. I mean, Mercury in conjunct or quincunx Neptune, it does bring up some kind of foggy or idealistic communication that needs adjustment. So it could potentially cause some misunderstandings, or maybe it can bring up creative inspiration that's really clashing with, reality or your routine or what you can get done. And the inconjunct that we're going to see to Pluto in Aquarius, tensions can be deep, and we can find that there can be transformative ideas, or there could be power dynamics in discussions that are coming up. Now, obviously, this is really urging subtle shifts in our perspective. And then that square to Uranus in Gemini will spark sudden disruptions or brilliant ideas, but there can be some erratic insights, and communication can feel a little turbulent. Likely, this is really going to challenge stable thinking with innovative shocks. And I think overall, September 3rd is just like wild because it's a day of mental friction, detail-oriented kind of things coming up. And it's really asking us to be a little bit more flexible because there could be potential surprises or changes to our schedule or some tech glitches. Now, we get a little bit of like a reprieve. Things are kind of calm for a little bit until Mercury makes the next aspect, which is not going to be until the 12th of September. But I think honorable mention is definitely with the sun coming into conjunction with the South Node on September 10th at 18 degrees. That's a Virgo degree. So it's a double dose of changes with jobs, changes with health, changes with schedules. And we also see that Mercury is the dispositor of that. Now, Mercury's not really doing anything, but it is kind of suggesting that there's going to be conversations about, hey, there's changes in your schedule, or hey, we have to reschedule an appointment, or maybe you're getting, contact from a doctor's office or somebody that's like, hey, we need to come back in and see you. You're kind of due for your exam or whatever. And the moon's going to be meeting with Chiron that day too. So a lot of it's going to be about healing personal wounds, revolving around our habits and our routines. And then we'll see on the 12th, right after the sun comes into conjunction with the South Node, Mercury is in conjunction with the South Node, kind of the 11th into the 12th. And this is pretty significant because it's going to happen right around a cazimi. So it's kind of like the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, boom. We're going to see a cazimi that's going to be happening at what appears to be 20 degrees. And the cazimi is the superior aspect where Mercury pulls ahead of the sun. And it's going to happen very early in the morning of the 13th. Now, I think this is pretty powerful that this is happening with close conjunction or proximity to the South Node. So it means that we are going to kind of have some clearing out of bad habits. So that's positive. A lot of them can be mental or can be things that we don't even realize that we're doing. We can also see that there can be changes going on at work or with staff or things like that. But this cazimi is really bringing up, I think, for a lot of people with the South Node, that we're dealing with the past still. There are things that are kind of coming up with the past. So Mercury conjunct the South Node and sextile to Jupiter in Cancer, which is more taking place like on the 12th, is really emphasizing the need to, release karmic things and outdated patterns in communication from the past. So it's perfect for letting go of kind of Virgo's more kind of finicky, perfectionist energy. And that sextile that you're going to see to Jupiter can actually provide some harmonious opportunities for emotional expansion, learning, emotional insights. And also it's a really great time to kind of clean and organize your home or kind of get your schedule in order with your family if you're planning things. And I like that it's blending Virgo's more kind of precision-based energy with the nurturing energy of Jupiter in Cancer. So contextually, what this is doing is it's really supporting, reviewing, and upgrading routines in faith and also future abundance. But I like this for kind of getting your home in order, organizing, decluttering, donating things, giving things away. I think it can be good for that. And then the Cazimi comes in, which is going to be at 20 degrees, which is a Scorpio degree on the 13th. And this is the exact conjunction between the sun and Mercury. And this is where Mercury kind of dies in the heart of the sun, but it also can mean that there is an epiphany, there's a download, there's some kind of news drop or information that comes out. And I think it's really great for mental clarity and vitality. And what it's bringing in is a fresh cycle of intellectual power, right? Sun and Mercury. In Virgo, this conjunction that's taking place is really kind of burning away any illusions. And what it's doing is it's providing profound insights into health, work, and analytical pursuits. So you want to use this Cazimi as a day for watching for breakthroughs when it comes to planning or problem solving or making some real deep transformations when it comes to your health. At a Scorpio degree, I think it's great for detoxing or kind of uncovering where there's been some issues or some problems with our health and our habits and maybe what we're afraid to change or what we're afraid to face. Interesting that on the day of the Cazimi also, the moon is in Gemini, which is also connected to Mercury, and it will kind of start coming into a square the very next day and kind of showing where certain things are breaking down as a result of news that's kind of breaking around the 13th and the 14th. So I'm just waiting for how the media is going to be spinning some of the factual data and analytics that's going to be coming out about job numbers, about changes that's going on with jobs, about also the economy. And also, I think just crazy information that's going to start kind of breaking out about health and protocols relating to health and things that are coming out of the FDA, maybe even changes going on with education and news revolving around like teachers can be popping up. Some transportation issues we can see here as well. Now, then on the 15th, we're going to see Mercury make an inconjunct or a quincunx to Chiron in Aries. And that's at a 26. So this is kind of like a Taurus degree. So this might be more related to food, what we're consuming, stuff dealing with additives in food, changes going on with food supply. And that inconjunct or quincunx is actually kind of showing us where, we need to have some kind of necessary information to make better decisions and be better guided when it comes to health and healing and recovering from injuries. In particular, my eyes are kind of set on, Virgo themes. So whether it's, unhealthy habits or things that we've been doing that we didn't know was unhealthy, and that could be dealing with gadgets and tech and things kind of connected to frequencies. It could also be stuff that's connecting to our diet and allergies, treatments that are potentially being proposed and whether or not it's, to treat allergies or issues pertaining to the sinuses, the face, stuff like that. Animals and pets, things connecting to veterinary science is a huge focus with Mercury and I think the sun in Virgo as well. And leadership, the sun is leadership. So while the sun's going through there, it's like, who's making decisions about what's going on at work or who's making decisions about what's going on in regards to health and and systems. So I think a lot of it's going to be a lot of the news revolving around, at least as an American, RFK. And, I know he's got presentations that he's going to be presenting, particularly on anything kind of connecting to the medical establishment and autism. Certainly, Mercury conjunct the sun, it's combust. So we're going to be seeing for a couple of days that there is this buildup where a leader, the sun, might be releasing South Node, some kind of information, Mercury, pertaining to these things. And keep in mind, everything's opposing Saturn and Pisces, retrograde. So what the medical establishment didn't want us to know, what the hospitals have known, the emotional, psychological impacts and effects that are kind of going on, things kind of correlating and relating to, unseen data or studies, private studies and things kind of coming out of like hospitals and universities. So I'm I'm waiting for it. I'm ready. I'm anticipating that this is only the beginning. I don't think everything is just going to be kind of spilled out in September. I think that this is a part of the eclipse cycle that is about transparency and accountability. And unfortunately, with oppositions to Saturn, there's going to be a lot of people being like, well, where was the accountability? Where was the leadership? I think with that quincunx, though, to Chiron, really what it's highlighting is the wounds revolving around self-expression and intellect. And this is obviously requiring us to kind of have some adjustments in how we're kind of communicating our vulnerabilities. So in the Virgo context, it's more about the surface, insecurity surfacing that's dealing with perfectionism or service. And it's really encouraging healing through, practical dialogue. So things like therapy, right? Or working with doctors or coaches, and really approaching some of these issues with compassion and integrating more of that bold energy of Aries without the self-doubt. And I think that can be nice, having the Sun and Mercury on the South Node. We're letting go of like that self-doubt. We're learning to kind of trust ourselves again. And then the kind of final aspect, and it's a big one, and I have been telling everybody, watch when you see on September 17th, the Mercury-Saturn opposition. Okay, 28 degrees, 28 degrees. Now, this is a Cancer degree, so it's about like emotions. And the Sun just barely got into Virgo, and I'm already noticing this. I'm like, wow, there's some stuff that's kind of going on in like the Virgo area of the chart that, like needs to go, like old habits, and that a lot of it is just like instinctual or intuitive. That's like, maybe I should make this change, or I should be eating this or doing that, or stop doing this. I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but you're going to feel this kind of coming up a lot throughout the month of September. So listen to some of those hunches. Makes me think about, I saw an article that was on Twitter this week that was saying something about like time changing, and that if you're having like an intuitive like gut feeling, that it can actually be memories from the future. I know this sounds like super crazy and abstract, but stay with me. And I was reading the article and I was like, so interesting that people who just have that strong kind of like intuitive hit about what they should or shouldn't do, it doesn't matter what it is, just in general. And that can be tapping into like time travel, and that in reality, you're just picking up on stuff that has already happened in the future to better kind of guide you in the now. I think this stuff's real. I really do. And I think that because Saturn is connected to time, and we're going to see Mercury in opposition to Saturn, time is going to seem so weird over the next couple of months with Saturn back in Pisces. But I also feel like we can be picking up on stuff that's going to be coming in the future. Why? Well, the solar eclipse in Virgo around the 21st is going to be at 29 degrees, which is a critical degree. You guys want to know about that, you got to go watch my webinar. But this is highlighting the potential dilemma or conflict, or what we're going to be kind of grappling with in terms of some kind of breakdown or something that's no longer working. And this is where you're going to get that gut kind of intuitive hit, because it's at 28, it's a Cancer degree. It's also about the past to better kind of prepare for the future. On this day, transits are crazy. Not only do you see the opposition that's going to be at the same degree, but you're also going to be seeing that the moon is going through Leo, which is directly connected to the sun, and it's opposing Pluto. So I'm expecting some kind of drama around the 17th. And Mercury opposed Saturn is not a great day for communication. It's just not. So if you're trying to travel, if you're trying to have an important conversation, sign contracts, make sense of something, look, Saturn's back in Pisces now. It's back in clown world. And we're going to see this for a couple of months. And this opposition is going to create some tension between, Virgo's more kind of logical, detail-oriented energy, and, Saturn in Pisces, which is dreamy, it's mystical, it's magical, but it's also downright crazy. There's lack of boundaries, right? Saturn is retrograde. Things are breaking down. And there is lack of, I think, leadership, all right? Like, things aren't going to make sense. And there's going to be a lot of vague things going on. We're going to be like, what does this mean? Like, how do we make sense of this? So it'll manifest as more of like this serious, restrictive kind of nature. And we're going to feel like there is restrictions in communication or data or information, or there's going to be delays. That's like, well, we'll give you more information down the road. And people are going to get kind of frustrated by this, and they're going to be demanding more from leadership. I find it very fascinating also that this is the same area where the moon is, where Mars was retrograde, where Mercury was retrograde. And we've seen just a whole slew of things that have happened throughout those retrogrades. That's where a lot of changes going on with global leaders, and I think how they're navigating cleaning up, making changes, and a lot of it is connected to government jobs. A lot of it's connected to healthcare and health systems. and also how they're navigating and kind of changing what's happening with global economies, particularly I think with jobs. So I'm thinking, because Saturn, just deals with the government in general, not only is this opposition saying that I think there's going to be a ton of government job layoffs, but I also think the eclipse is saying the same thing. So we may see that kind of play out over about a 6 to 12 month period. It demands balance, because there's going to be delays. There is a sense of fostering disciplined thinking with realistic planning, but watch for being pessimistic on this day. Obviously, contextually, this is really testing Mercury in Virgo's efficiency against Saturn's lessons in structure and releasing and letting things go. So, this can be a good time for kind of seeing where there are some speed bumps or some stop signs, and really reevaluating any of our long-term commitments. And just realize that there is going to be some cloudiness and some confusion, and some potential frustration. Not only that, but we also see Mercury, as it's coming into an opposition with Saturn, the very next day it's going to go into Libra, and it'll form an opposition to Neptune. So kind of like the 17th, 18th, 19th are not great communication days. And then we have the 21st, where we're going to have the eclipse. Positive is that, when Mercury gets into Libra, and you'll see that on the 18th, there are going to be some ways around this, right? So now that Mercury, the mind, is in Libra, a Venusian kind of air sign, we are going to be thinking more about diplomacy, working together, reaching out to our therapists, our counselors, our coaches. We're going to be practicing better communication, or at least trying to. And it's going to form a trine to Uranus in Gemini. So it's going to be unconventional ideas in communications or travel, and then also Pluto in Aquarius. So I'm trying to see the positive in some of these aspects. And I'm like, yeah, now we're going to be like, okay, we have to work together. We have to find the people to kind of help support us through this. But it will make an opposition to Neptune. So it's still very kind of clouded and confusing. So we'll get into that as we kind of get into later in September. We'll do a video on Mercury in Libra. But for the most part, I think it's a really great next couple of weeks to kind of get our shift in order. Mercury is really great for getting down to details and kind of figuring out what is and is not working. So I encourage you guys to listen to your 12 rising signs, listen to your rising sun and your moon, and see where the where the Mercury going through Virgo transit, it's not retrograde, is taking place, to help you guys figure out what you need to let go of and how you can kind of clean up and better organize that part of your chart. The eclipse is going to be doing the same thing as well. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's get into the weekly breakdown. Obviously, this is going to be for August 31st, 2025 through September 7th, 2025. And this is kind of the wrap up of August going into September. Are you guys ready for it? Are you ready for eclipse season? Because I think you're going to start feeling it this week. Now, if you guys caught my video on Sunday last week, just as like a recap for Sunday, August 31st, we wake up in the morning, and this morning the moon is in Sagittarius. So it's bright, it's shiny. We're seeing some really nice aspects that are taking place between the moon and Venus in Leo, as well as the moon and Saturn and Neptune. It's losing the trine as the day goes on, but that fire trine from kind of Saturday into Sunday is still active. Only hang up is that we are going to see the first quarter square taking place very early this morning, where the moon in Sagittarius squares the sun in Virgo. Now, this is kind of checking some of the new moon intentions that we set in Virgo when we had that 0-degree new moon last week. And obviously, while the moon's in Sagittarius, we're feeling bold, dynamic, creative. We want to have fun. We want to learn. We want to travel. And it's playing off of this energy of Jupiter in Cancer. So it's not really making any aspects to Jupiter. It is going to be in conjunct or quincunx at some point, where it's like, well, do we stay home or do we get out and about and do things? And maybe being a little optimistic about how we're navigating changes like on the domestic kind of home front. But because Jupiter is at a 17 and Mars in Libra is at a 15, while the moon is going through Sagittarius, you guys are going to be feeling that square. And it's going to be hanging around all week long. I have found that Mars transits usually hit a little early, and I've been laughing reading your guys' comments. People were leaving me a lot of comments in the last week that are like, like everything that you're talking about hits me a couple days early. So with Mars aspects and also with eclipse aspects, anything that I'm discussing can be happening all week long. You just kind of have to roll with the punches and look for the days where you're going to have better aspects with the moon. Anyway, while the moon is moving through Sagittarius, What is interesting is that it is going to eventually at some point come into a square with the north and the south node. So it is going to bring up some kind of fated travel plans, education plans, beliefs, philosophies that are kind of up for reevaluation. And while the moon's going through Sag, it is also going to be coming into a sextile with Mars in Libra. So it can be excellent for, traveling with people, making plans for travel, getting things in order to learn and kind of go places. And it looks like that sextile between the moon and Mars is pretty active throughout the late morning into the afternoon. Great for communication and making plans. And then as we get into the evening, the moon is going to come into a square with the north and the south node. Okay, so that's where things get a little sticky. Moon square the nodes means that there can be fated situations kind of happening this Sunday that's going to kind of get us out of the past and into the future. And a lot of it can be kind of confusing because this is in mutable signs. Now, I think the key transit that you want to focus on is the fact that the moon in Sagittarius is really highlighting Jupiter, where it's about growth and expansion emotionally and kind of healing. Positive is that it is starting to trine the north node in Pisces, so we're feeling our way into intuitive changes that are kind of going on in the world and how that's impacting our home, our families, our living situation, and emotional healing. But we're also feeling the tension of where there could be good changes happening on the home front, and it's bringing up some kind of pressure or maybe some conflict that could be going on in relationships. I call this growing pains. Mars is kind of combative and confrontational. In Libra, it tries to be diplomatic, so you might find that it's just a little bit harder to keep the peace with spouses, with roommates, with family members, and that people can be kind of emotionally overreactionary throughout the next couple of days with this Mars-Jupiter square. If you happen to be obviously ruled by Mars, so if you're like an Aries or if you're a Scorpio rising, you're going to feel the effects of this. If you're a Libra or Libra rising, it's just about kind of overdoing it. And if you happen to be a Cancer, a Sag, or a Pisces rising, Mars is squaring your chart ruler, so you got to feel the effects of that as well. I do talk about that in my August horoscope, so you guys want to watch that again if you need a recap. But I think on Sunday, the vibe is actually pretty adventurous, I think, with the moon in Sag and expansive. But we're going to feel this push and pull between kind of like optimism and like practical realities because this is the first quarter square happening early in the morning. So the Sag moon wants to think about the big picture. And while it squares the north and the south node, it's going to be highlighting destiny versus karma tensions, which we're already kind of feeling with the eclipses coming in. So it's ideal for philosophical reflections and kind of building relational, friction that can be happening with the Mars-Jupiter square. I would say this Sunday, you want to embrace exploration, and you could do that through reading or learning or outdoor activities, planning travel or events. Just avoid overcommitting. And this is a really good day, I think, because the moon is going to start coming into a trine Sunday night going into Monday with Mercury, that you guys could actually focus on journaling about your long-term goals and making sure that they're kind of aligning with where you actually see yourself going with that north node square between the moon and the nodes. All right. So moon's going to continue into Sagittarius in the evening. And then this is going to take us into Monday, which will be September the 1st. All right, so we wake up in the morning, moon's still in Sagittarius. Let's talk positive. Positive is that the moon is now coming into a trine with Mercury in Leo. It's also going to come into a trine with Chiron and Aries. So this is going to form a fire trine, which I like. I think the challenge is that as we get throughout the day, we're then going to see that the moon is going to come into a square with Saturn in Pisces. And that's going to be at a critical degree, 29 degrees. Saturn's back in Pisces as of September 1st. If you guys didn't see that video, check it out. I talk about why this is an important period to tie up loose ends karmically. And we're kind of reviewing some of the themes of Saturn and Pisces that we've been dealing with since 2023. Now, if you are obviously ruled by Saturn, so if you are a Capricorn or an Aquarius rising, this will impact you a little bit more. Pisces placements from about 23 to 29 degrees, you're going through a once in like a 29-year Saturn cycle, so you're still being tested. And that 29 degrees is important because it's the final degree of the Zodiac. So we're now collectively all going through some kind of like closing cycle, and we're releasing things. And all of this is tied to Jupiter. Not only are we seeing trines to Jupiter, but Jupiter is the dispositor. So it's so emotional, guys. We're going to feel so emotional over the next couple of months with these aspects. Now, what you need to know is that that fire trine, I think, is really great, and it's going to help us better kind of communicate and talk about healing, and also what we're learning from overcoming obstacles or like injuries. And you won't see the moon come into a square with Saturn until much later in the day. So for the most part, it looks like you're going to pick up the trine and the square right about the same time. So in the afternoon hours, the moon, kind of late afternoon, early evening, the moon will trine Mercury. So communication later in the day, on one hand, is positive and it is better because the moon is talking about fluctuating emotions and tying emotions to, like actual ideas and being able to communicate and express how we feel. However, the challenge is that we are going to then see the moon come into a square with Saturn. So it's kind of like, well, we're going to be feeling like we're ready to have a conversation and be bold, right? Mercury and Leo. But it's going to be like, ooh, do I say something? Am I kind of getting out of line here? Is it the right time? And I think that moon square Saturn can definitely bring some emotional kind of like blockages or a difficulty kind of connecting. Key transit on the 1st is going to be that Saturn's back in Pisces, point blank. And when Saturn's at 29 degrees, it's like nails on a chalkboard. So a lot of us are definitely going to be feeling the karmic kind of limitations. And yes, you get hit with that wave of feeling sluggish or feeling tired or feeling run down, but also we could feel more inspired or getting back into kind of meditation or spiritual practices. And when I see some of the aspects that are kind of happening on Monday, I feel like really the vibe is healing and communicative in the morning. And as we get into the evening and the moon starts squaring Saturn, it's going to be more shifting to kind of discipline yet dreamy. The chiron trine between the moon encourages vulnerability, but the square to Saturn at 29 degrees brings karmic lessons and boundaries. Now, then in the evening, we're going to see the moon shift into Capricorn, which obviously we're doing a lot of emotional kind of heavy lifting for the next couple of days. And Capricorn is about responsibility, our work. It's also about leadership, government, things that are going on in the world with business. And we're going to see the moon immediately come into a square with Neptune in Aries at a 1. So between the moon square Saturn, where there's some blockages and breakdown, moon square Neptune, there could be some confusion. And, at least Cap Moon adds some kind of structure, but it's highlighting that Saturn at 29 degrees. And as it starts to come into a square with Neptune and Aries, it's definitely blurring the edges of, well, what are my emotions or what's my responsibility versus what's other people's. So we can be feeling a little burned out with work on Monday night, Monday evening, we get home and we're like, I'm just exhausted. I think that on Monday, it's a good day to be addressing old wounds through honest conversations and honest talks. Set realistic kind of evening routines as you're kind of winding the day down, but recognize that there could be some intuitive detours that could be coming up for you where you're kind of like, well, I'm torn between what I have to get done and what I'm feeling inspired to do. There could be a little frustration in regards to that. Now, we're going to keep moving into what will be Tuesday, September the 2nd. And in the morning, the moon is still in Capricorn. So we're still focused on emotional labor, heavy work, responsibility. But this is all feeding off of Saturn in Pisces now, ruled by Saturn. So it's basically saying, well, what is breaking down? What is dissolving? What is being removed in terms of both Capricorn, so job, responsibility, and leadership, but also Pisces, like things we didn't see coming that's changing at work, shifts that are happening emotionally for us that's shifting the direction of where we're going with our, our purpose or our career. Now, what you will see is that this is a day where the moon is going to trine the sun. So we've got sun in Virgo, practical, busy, right? Getting things organized, focusing on cleanliness, organization, purification, making sure things work. And the moon is going to come into a trine with the sun. So this is kind of like the first day that I'm like, all right, things are really jiving. We can actually get a lot of work done. The other thing to think about is while this is happening, we're also going to be seeing Mercury is going to come into the sign of Virgo. So this will be the day that you're going to notice that kind of mental shift. And overnight, Mercury will square Uranus in Gemini. But honestly, I think we're going to be feeling it throughout the day. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to head on Wednesday. I think you'll feel it on Tuesday. Now, this is a day that to me feels pretty grounded, right? It feels pretty practical. So let me show you guys that. So we've got Mercury that goes into Virgo. It's going to be first thing in the morning. And this is that yod, or that finger of fate that I was talking about, where it quincunxes Neptune, it quincunxes Pluto, and it's basically saying, hi, we need to really focus on what's going on in the Virgo area of our chart, preparing for the eclipse season, and also changing our mind, changing the way that we do things. Oh, I have found myself this week with some of those squares to Uranus and Gemini that I just had to like stop and be like, I just need to take a breath, because it was like mental overload. And I was like, oh my God, I just need to like stand in the center of my office and like take my shoes off ground and like do breath work exercises. Like that was the only thing that could kind of calm me down. I think that could be beneficial for some people. Mercury is the lungs, and it is about our routine. And like, breath is the one thing that grounds us next to pain or weight. So you guys have your choice. But you might have to take some time this week, especially around like the 2nd and the 3rd, and just take a deep breath, right? Practice the box method, do some, guided meditation or something, so you're not just like in mental overload, because that can happen. But if you're willing to roll with the punches and make these changes, it can actually be really great, and we could get a lot of work done, and we can be very productive on Tuesday. So, there's a spark of innovation with Mercury coming into a square with Uranus. At least the Capricorn moon is going to be, trining the sun, and it'll start coming into a trine with the south node. So what this can do is this can support steady progress, but Mercury's square to Uranus that's building will bring sudden insights or disruptions or anxiety. So I'm hoping that it's mental breakthroughs amidst some of the unexpected twists that are taking place. And I would say on Tuesday, you want to tackle your to-do list with focus. Like, you got a lot of good things happening in the morning. The fact that the moon is going to be pretty much in a trine to the sun until about early afternoon. This is, I think, one of the more productive days that you're going to see. So stay flexible. Yes, we can see some plans change, some tech glitches with, Uranus and Mercury square, but I think it could also be some aha moments. And if we really, use them to kind of refine our plans, we can actually have a breakthrough, right? So it looks like as the moon continues throughout the day, it's just going to continue to keep going through Capricorn, trine right at the end of the day, and that's pretty much it. And then it looks like overnight, Mercury is coming into a square with Uranus. So you're going to see that kind of the very early hours of September 3rd, which is Wednesday. Some of us might wake up to some shocking and surprising news. Certainly it's at a 1. So it can mean, things that we have to do very quickly, or we have to scramble to kind of change plans or kind of make some shifts. And that moon is still going to be in Capricorn. So first thing in the morning, moon is now coming into a trine with the south node. So we're kind of clearing stuff out. I think some people are going to find out that they're like, oh, so-and-so got laid off, or, my schedule is changing, or I got called back into work or something. And I've said this in previous videos, so I'm going to say it again. Uranus and the sun coming into conjunction with the south node, some people who were let go or laid off are going to be brought back in. People in certain industries who were let go of because of health regulations or limitations or budgeting issues, or maybe their job was replaced by AI or a computer, they're going to be brought back in. We're going to see some of this stuff, or you're going to be reconnecting with people you've worked with, or maybe you're returning back to old kind of habits and realizing that they're kind of coming back up and they need to be cleared out. Now, the trine of the south node is good. However, this is a day where stuff gets a little intense, particularly for the cardinal signs. You're going to see first thing in the morning, the moon in Capricorn is going to square Mars in Libra, which is bringing up tension between work and responsibility and who we work with, who we partner with, romantic relationships, spouses, and it will oppose Jupiter. So Wednesday morning feels dramatic to me because when we have, cardinal squares, in this case, it's a T-square. So it's really highlighting Mars in Libra, which is not happy here because, Libra wants to partner and Mars is kind of like, let's squabble. And there's going to be a lot of like, who's responsible for what, whose job is what happening on Wednesday morning. And we're also going to see throughout this tense T-square, it's making it difficult for diplomacy or for relationships. Moon will also later in the day come into a square with Chiron and Aries, and this will be in the PM hours. And then it's going to start to sextile Saturn kind of later in the evening, going throughout the day. Positive. Let's talk positive. Positive is that Jupiter in Cancer is trining North Node in Pisces, okay, which we're actually kind of feeling all week, but there's a lot of 18s getting brought up. Jupiter at 18, South Node at 18, North Node at 18, Moon's going to hit 18, Mars is going to hit 18 degrees. In degree astrology, it's a Virgo degree. And it's not a pleasant degree, unfortunately. It deals with, having to kind of clear things out. It deals with having to roll up our sleeves and do some dirty work, or it represents where there could be health issues or illness issues or things that are just like breaking down for the most part. Sorry, guys, I have tarot cards in all of my books. All right, so 18, where is it? There we go. All right, so this is what Nicola says about the 18 degrees, which is 6 or 18, Virgo. To work, workplace, colleagues from work, workers, workshops, offices, locations of work, hardworking, to be interested only in work. I think it's safe to say a lot of us are just like consumed with us right now. I don't know if you guys are feeling it. I'm feeling it. Those who work for us, our employees, health, illness, health center, general health practitioners, everything associated with health, macrobiotic, health food stores, the ones who cures, medical care booklets and prescriptions, healthy ways of life, service industry, customers, clients, those who repeat services, a subtenant status, renting or to be a subtenant, veterinary science, vets, domestic animals, pets, food shops to analyze, to play chess, step parents, clothes, keeping clothes, aunts, uncles, stomachs, honey, and bees. Okay, so I think digestion is like a huge theme with Virgo, like what we're eating, what we should or shouldn't be eating. And obviously this is kind of the precursor for some of the news that's going to be coming out about health and also jobs that'll play out really throughout the week and in the month. So I think the key here is that the positive in the midst of what can feel like a very dramatic 17, which will become 18, T-square, is Jupiter is trining the North Node. And I feel like with Jupiter in Cancer, it's like emotionally feeling your way into being like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to release, it's okay to let things go, it's okay to like let things dissolve, like let it be, and work through the emotions, even though it can be difficult. So the daily vibe for Wednesday, for me, feels like it's all over the place. Like literally. Most of the intensity is going to be in the morning, and then we're going to see that kind of fade a little bit. And it's going to get easier as the day goes on. And then as we get later in the day, the moon is going to start coming into a sextile with Saturn overnight. So early morning feels tense. This is still an ambitious yet emotionally charged day. And there is some faded growth opportunities that can happen with the squares. The trine between, Jupiter and the North Node is really about easing some of the stuff that's kind of coming up and releasing it. But the T-square is relational or diplomatic tension. And in the evening, when the moon starts coming into a square with Chiron and Aries, it's going to be showing us where we're kind of stirring up some insecurities. And I also feel like there can be a little bit more stability because the moon's going to start sextiling Saturn. And obviously that's like the ruler of this particular day because the moon's in Capricorn. So it's helping us like restructure things, but still the theme is what? Letting go, right? So a lot of emotional kind of things all over the place, and people either feeling more emotionally charged or, people who are a little bit more kind of combative and confrontational on Wednesday. All right, and then we're going to go into the 4th, which obviously is going to be Thursday. And we wake up in the morning and the moon is in Aquarius. Okay, so moon's in Aquarius. Obviously, it's conjunct Pluto, all right? So there can be, hot emotional meltdowns going on, a lot of emotional intensity, a lot of shock and surprise about things that are kind of going on in the world. There is this emotional pressure, to purge, change, and transform things. And the positive is that it's making a lot of other aspects. So while we're looking at the moon in Aquarius, we look at Uranus. Well, it's in Gemini and it's trine. And Uranus and Pluto are also trine. So there's opportunity for a lot of communication breakthroughs that can actually be happening, socializing, networking, party planning, seeing friends, things like that with that communication aspect. Obviously, it can feel intense, though, in some relationships. And the moon is also in a sextile to Neptune in Aries. As we go throughout the day, the moon is going to start coming into an opposition with Venus in Leo. That's pretty much really the only big aspect you're going to see. The moon will also quincunx Mercury and also the sun a little bit, but I think Thursday is overall a decent day once we get out of the conjunction with Pluto. So that's going to be happening very early in the morning. Some of you guys won't even be up yet. And I think that on Thursday, we got to kind of keep in mind that even though the moon is, trining Uranus where we could communicate and travel and learn better, this is the day that we're going to see Mars coming into a square with Jupiter that's going to perfect. Okay, so Thursday. And Moon conjunct Pluto can also be bringing up, oh, there is this crisis, or there is this intensity. And, look at, we've got the square between the two. Jupiter's ruled by the Moon. Moon's conjunct Pluto. And we've got Mars that's ruled by Venus, and the Moon's going to oppose Venus. It's sad. It's sad to me that throughout all of the oppositions that we have seen, whether it was the Mars retrograde in Leo opposed Pluto, the Mercury retrograde in Leo, which slightly opposed Pluto, the Venus in opposition to Leo, Venus in Leo in opposition to Pluto just recently. It manifested as that shooting that happened. I think it was in Minnesota. It's always brought up some kind of crisis. Like, it's where everybody gets freaked out and they get scared and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, collective chaos and like fear. It's very Pluto and Aquarius. And it's been a lot of where, children are being harmed, or where there's a lot of like relationship, drama that's being exposed, or there is some kind of like, strife that's happening in public places where people are, potentially injured or harmed. And so I'm just kind of like over it. I'm really over it. I feel like it's really hard, I think, collectively for a lot of people to continue to see these news cycles and these things that are happening, because it makes people feel like they're not safe. And, the traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn. And so I'm also looking at Saturn where I'm like, when these events are happening out in the world, people are going to look around, they're going to go, well, why is this happening? And I don't think you have to be an astrologer to know by looking at Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces to be like, well, we've got some kind of like mental health epidemic going on in the world right now. We've got a lot of people who are on a lot of pharmaceuticals, and we've got a lot of people who could really benefit from having, I think, better leadership and support in medical care. I also think that there are a lot of people who, go kind of unseen in society when a lot of the obvious signs are there that there is either some psychological trauma, or there is a spiritual issue or a religious crisis, or there's some kind of pain, right? Like the late degrees of Pisces are about crying. And so I think that we're going to hear a lot more about some of the recent events around the 4th and what's been happening, and like the reality of, where there is some stuff that's being hidden or, being kind of skewed or manipulated. Like Pisces can be that. Which we're already seeing about some of this stuff, because the media is not crazy about the narrative of the background of the individual who was involved in this in Minnesota, which I think is interesting. There's a lot of ties to the family being involved in government and other things. And so I anticipate we're going to hear a little bit more about some of this stuff, and also just increasing voices calling for like leadership to prevent some of these tragedies. So the 4th, I think, is going to be a little intense. We will see the Moon continue to come into opposition with Venus, and that's going to be happening overnight in the evening hours. And then it looks like the Mars-Jupiter square is going to be happening, pretty much all day, but it's going to be exact in the evening. So watch for that square, especially if you have anything, I would say, about 16 to 20 degrees of the cardinal signs. It's going to be pretty impactful for you. And I do cover that in my September horoscopes. Now, the vibe for Thursday is it's innovative, it's transformative. Obviously, there's a little bit of a rebellious edge with the Moon in Aquarius conjunct Pluto. I think the aspects are fueling breakthroughs with trines to Uranus, and I also feel like the opposition that we're going to see to Venus kind of in the evening overnight is going to highlight value clashes. Now, that Mars-Jupiter square is really exaggerating actions in partnerships or growth pursuits. So I'm looking at this as growing pains, what we need to do to be able to kind of level up and kind of grow when it comes to our home families or emotions. But that can bring some tension in relationships where it's like, well, who's doing what, or who's responsible for what? And particularly we could see like relationships with, spouses and family, or we could see issues with uncles or cousins. We could see some tension that can also be going on with employees or fellow, people that we kind of work with, and people from the past, because Cancer's in the sign of the past. So that can be coming up as well. And I would just watch for that. So know that the tip for Thursday is try to collaborate in the midst of the pressure. This is also about forward-thinking projects. Watch for people. They're going to be overreacting, especially when it comes to love or money or home or property matters, relational matters with family. And we really want to channel some of this energy, if we can, to communicating, talking about the solution, not necessarily the problem, where we're going in the future, and really leaning on some of these communication aspects if at all possible. This will now take us into Friday, which is going to be September the 5th. And first thing in the morning, the moon is in Aquarius still. It is now coming into an inconjunct or a quincunx with Jupiter. It is also coming to an inconjunct or a quincunx with the sun. So it's saying we got to work together collectively in order to get things done. And at least now it's trining Mars in Libra. Okay, so this is like a decent kind of social aspect that you're going to see on Friday, pretty much all day. And the inconjunct of the quincunx to Jupiter in Cancer and the sun in Virgo makes that a focal point of a yod. So it's like if you do need to make changes with your health and habits, or if you do need to make changes that's kind of going on with your home and your emotions, there can be a lot of feedback support that can come from a community, joining a network, calling your best friend, right? And like trying to kind of tackle some of these things in like a team effort. Particularly like, let's say, Jupiter in Cancer is just like an ever expanding like home situation. And, the sun in Virgo is like needing to clean or organize things, or you have some improvement project you need to do at home, right? The Friday night's like, okay, I'll get some beer and pizza. You guys come over and help me paint my house. Or, we all have just like too much stuff in our garages. Like, let's organize and come together and find a way that we can, maybe be able to donate stuff together to a local community, or maybe we can, organize a garage sale or something that we can kind of do like this weekend. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you want to do. Finding ways to bring people together that works for everybody's schedule. And also it's going to be about cleaning, organizing, and kind of perfecting things. So there can be a lot of support that can come from the community. And also this can be a great time to like do like meetings and anything that's going to be about team collaboration with the moon trine Mars as well. So I like that aspect on Friday. I do feel like this day is a little bit more dynamic and social. We will need to make some minor adjustments because of some of the inconjunctions we're going to see, but that moon trine Mars is really boosting initiative in groups or relationships, and it can be very social as well. But those quincunx are going to show friction between innovation and practicality and our emotional needs. And obviously we're building up into the eclipse because the eclipse is in Pisces. So this is where the moon is kind of going through the last sign before it enters into the eclipse sign that we're going to see. That's going to add some subtle kind of intuitive, kind of undercurrents that you're going to be seeing kind of going into Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, emotions are definitely high, and there's this sense of what we need to get done versus what we would rather be doing, or kind of where we need to work as a team to kind of get some stuff in order. I would say the tip I have for you guys on Friday is probably network or advocate for change if you can. Socialize, get together with other people. Fine-tune your habits by blending logic with empathy, and try to avoid some of the scattered energy that you're going to see. Very productive morning. The moon's going to hit 19 Aquarius. It's going to trine Mars, and that's going to be perfecting right around the PM hours. So those of you guys who want to socialize and get together and do things, I think you should and you could. The only thing to kind of think about is that there's going to be some schedule changes for some people. And it does look like the moon will make that opposition to Venus early in the morning. So there's like a longing for, togetherness or other people that can kind of come up for some. And the moon's going to keep going through Aquarius all day. And that's going to lead us into what's going to be then Saturday the 6th. So if you're an early riser, Saturday morning, the moon's in Aquarius. And it's in the late degrees, so we're really feeling the, obviously, the effects of the moon starting to come into a square with Uranus, because that's the ruler. We're also feeling the effects of Saturn retrograde in Pisces. That's the traditional ruler. Nothing's really happening. Maybe we see a slight sextile to Chiron and Aries. But Saturday in the morning, things are still pretty social. And then early in the day, it's going to shift into Pisces. So now we're pretty much now getting into the eclipse vibes, which will be taking place on Sunday, the next day. So while it's in Aquarius, nothing's really happening. But then when it shifts into Pisces, now we're going to be focusing on what's going on with Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune's retrograde at 1 degree of Aries, and Jupiter is in Cancer. So you'll see at some point throughout the eclipse, it's going to come into a trine with Jupiter, actually, like right after the eclipse on Sunday. The vibe will shift. So, you'll notice that shift in the morning. That's just more like Pisces vibe, which is dreamy, creative, sensitive. It's also reflective. It needs a little bit more private time. And the moon is going to come into a square with Uranus. Okay. So this is connected to Jupiter, which is still square Mars. And Uranus is connected to Mercury. which is, technically it's combust. It's really close to the sun. So there's a lot of like, what's going down? Why is this breaking down? Why isn't this working? Why are my, clients changing schedules? What's going on? We're going to feel those shifts, especially because now we've got a number of placements: Moon, North Node, Saturn, all in Pisces. And then we've got South Node, Sun, and Mercury all in Virgo. And it's like where logic should meet intuition, but I think a lot of people are going to be like, what is going on? Like, why are things like changing so rapidly? Or like, why are people not making sense? Or why is it difficult to kind of relate? You will see that be part of this. And there can be, with the Pisces eclipse, some people that are kind of isolating, or they're not communicating very well, or they're not getting back to people. Communication can be challenging. You guys are going to see that because as the moon goes through Pisces on Saturday, it's going to start coming into an opposition with Mercury in Virgo. So we're feeling the eclipse vibes. The moon will actually oppose Mercury overnight, but you might be feeling that on Saturday evening. And I think with the moon moving through Pisces, there is this kind of like, shift. Like you're going to see in the morning, it's much more detached. And then as soon as it goes into Pisces, it's going to be much more compassionate and kind of fluid into the afternoon. Pisces ingress does soften things a little bit, but that square to Uranus and Gemini brings some kind of unpredictable conversations or emotions or some kind of unpredictable news. And overnight, we will see the moon in Pisces starting to come into an opposition with Mercury. Now, I, for one, would say you could see this all week, but especially like Saturday and Sunday, watch your dreams. Pay attention to your dreams. Have you guys noticed now that Saturn's back in Pisces how significant the dreams are? Have you noticed, and you will notice with the eclipse in Pisces and the North Node, that there is something that's kind of going on for the collective, and we're all noticing these very kind of weird, abstract, or like very vivid dreams. There can be a lot of symbolism that can come up in them. But I think overnight on Saturday on the 6th, while the moon's in Pisces, we're all dreaming, we're tapping into what's going on collectively, and it's opposing Mercury. So it can be giving us some key insights intuitively into, should I quit my job? Do I change my health habits? Do I make a change when it comes to my, productivity? Is, my subconscious trying to tell me there's something going on health-wise, or what's not healthy for me? Watch for some of those themes because I think it'll come up. And we're already feeling the eclipse vibes. So yeah, I think that the Mercury opposition really pits intuition against details. And this is really, really highlighting pre-eclipse sensitivity, where some people are like, well, let's schedule, or let's do this, or let's, sign that. And some people are like, oh no, I know it's an eclipse. No, I'm doing my routine. I'm, doing my soak or my sound bowls or my meditation, nope, my weekend is kind of like locked down. And maybe people are really tapping into that rather than feeling like they need to shuffle about, they need to be productive. They're kind of realizing this is the time to just, settle, because there's going to be such heightened emotions that are coming up. So my tip for you guys on Saturday is meditate, take some time by water, stay hydrated, put on some calming music, put on some incense, something that's going to help you just kind of like move through some of the energetic shifts that are happening. Plan on taking it easy Saturday and Sunday, if at all possible. You can create art to process feelings, release over control of any plans if things are changing. Remind yourself that the universe is handling the details, and embrace kind of going with the flow, because there is some method to the madness. And then this is going to lead us into Sunday, which is September 7th, where we are going to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces. So if you have anything around 13 to about 17 degrees of Pisces, this eclipse is very personal for you in your chart. 13 to about 17 degrees of the mutable signs. So Gemini, Virgo, Sag, you're feeling it as well. Check out my eclipse video or webinar if you guys want more on that. And I keep telling people, it's funny. I've been all week long talking to clients, and I've been like, well, this is the eclipse and this is what's going to happen. And they're like, that's happening now. So a lot of the things are already kind of taking place. But what do you need to know about an eclipse? Well, they happen every 6 months, right? They come in pairs, and they are the bringers of change. So we have a lunar eclipse full moon in Pisces, where the sun is in Virgo, the moon is in Pisces, really highlighting the access of health, service, sacrifice, organization, care. And it's about mind, body, spirit balance. And it's really showing us that we have to kind of intuitively navigate things a little bit more. And obviously the positive is that it is ruled by Jupiter, and it's trining Jupiter. So a lot of emotional breakthroughs, a lot of breakthroughs when it comes to ancestral patterning, healings, changing going on with our home and our family, feeling a little bit more tapped in and like kind of trusting that the universe has our back. But obviously still eclipses can be very, very big times for people where there could be major endings, right? So, Pisces is emotional, but a North Node lunar eclipse is very emotional. And we're kind of finishing off things that we've been focusing on working on really since about March of this year. So if you go back and look at that new moon, I think it was around like March the 10th, there was a new moon in Pisces. Now it's turning into a full moon lunar eclipse. So look at where Pisces is in your chart. Now, I think for the most part, this eclipse is interesting because it's like, logic had its chance, like astrology take the wheel. Like that's how I see this, or like the universe take the wheel, because moon in opposition to Mercury is just like the emotions and the communication. It's just not making sense. I think a lot of us are going to feel like what we're trying to get in order or trying to do on Sunday is just we're going with the flow, and maybe we're just having a lazy day, or we're having a day where we're just kind of, just tuning in and taking it easy. I think that the positive is that it's obviously trining Jupiter, so it can be very therapeutic and it can be very abundant for some people and very emotionally positive. But for some people, it's like overdoing it with the emotions, and it can be like you feel like you're drowning. And the moon is going to in conjunct or quincunx Mars, and it's also going to in conjunct and quincunx Venus. So it's going to show us all collectively where we are needing to kind of close up chapters where our heart's not open, or we're not healing the inner child, or we're not open to love or creativity, or there's maybe some new inspiration that's going to come in and show us what we need to see, where there's been some hidden factors going on in relationships, romance, and partnerships. So it can be like it could just blow all that stuff open. But I think it could be very inspirational and very creative with some of those aspects as well. We will also see that the moon, so the actual eclipse is going to be here. So it's going to be in the early afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Central Time, so it's going to be like around 1 o'clock. But right after the eclipse, the moon is going to conjunct the North Node. So that'll be in the evening, 18. And then it's going to trine Jupiter. So it's kind of like whatever is concluding or completing. Yes, it's emotional. We have to let something go. We have to trust the process. But it can be very good for us when it comes to expanding our emotions, intuition, our home, or our family. So yeah, I mean, I would be saying the daily vibe for Sunday is emotional and major revelations happening, faded releases. Obviously, it's an eclipse that's illuminating Pisces theme. So illusions, what's hidden, what we didn't know. Great time to be chanting, meditating, detoxing, cleansing, praying. And it's really supporting the North Node, trine between Jupiter. So it's expansive for healing. And we'll see some inconjuncts that are going to be happening as well. So some tweaks maybe in like love and relationship dynamics. But Sunday is a day to really reflect on your dreams and kind of surrender. I really encourage clients to avoid any major decisions, during an eclipse. So, life-changing things like quitting jobs, getting married, signing contracts, health decisions. Just take it easy on Sunday. Rest, recuperate, find a comfortable space at home where you can recharge. And reflect on your dreams, and know that this is about surrendering. And I would be focusing on compassion and gratitude rituals, and it's a great time to spend some time at home with friends and family with that trine to Jupiter. Okay? Pretty much it. Obviously, that's going to be kicking off what will be a 2-week eclipse portal. I always laugh when people say that, the eclipse portals. But it is. We're going to have to wait 2 weeks until we get to what will be the next eclipse, which will be a critical 29-degree solar eclipse in Virgo in opposition to Saturn. So this one's sweet. The next one's salty. I'll be doing a video about that at some point in the future. But just to kind of wrap up today's video, let's talk all things Mercury in Virgo, shall we? Let's talk about where Mercury is going to be moving for the 12 rising signs. So as a reminder, guys, I'm a Western astrologer. That is the kind of astrology I like to practice. I am not a Vedic astrologer, and I'm going to be showing you guys the Mercury in Virgo ingress for the rising signs. So I recommend listening to your rising sign first. That's going to show you exactly which house the Mercury transit is taking place in. That's including, the Cazimi, that's including the Mercury South Node, that's even including the solar eclipse. So there's something about this Mercury transit that's trying to bring forth some of the information prior to those eclipse changes that are going to be very big for you around the 21st. Now, from September 2nd to the 18th, 2025, Mercury will be moving through this sign. So if you happen to be a Gemini or a Virgo rising, this is very important for you, but everybody can benefit from this particular transit. All right, so let's go ahead and start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. Aries, you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury transiting through Virgo in your natal 6th house. Now, obviously, Mercury is going to be connecting to your 3rd house, Gemini, and your 6th house, Virgo. So what you're going to notice is that most of the action, the organization, the focus is on your 6th house, and it's also about kind of making shifts when it comes to your communication, your schedule, maybe even what you're learning or how you're connecting with people. I predict for my Aries risings that you're going to see that there is going to be an enhanced focus on health. Okay, that's going to be a huge focus for you the next couple of weeks. Also, work your daily routines and bringing efficiency when it comes to your health and habits. Now, you want to watch for stress from overanalysis, too much communication and communication overload, and communication in short trips or with siblings. You know, that can be themes that can be coming up as well, including scheduling. Now, where you want to get better organized or where you want to let go of old outdated ways, this is going to be your 6th house. So it's about streamlining your workspace and your health regimens. Ditch chaotic habits by adopting planners or apps for better routines. Set up new ways where you can kind of incorporate apps into your communication, your emails, your scheduling, things like that. So that way you feel like you're going to be a little bit more efficient and you're getting things done. Getting back to, order when it comes to your health or going back to your doctor's offices or, the gym. These can be themes as well. And getting information pertaining to your health can also be a big theme throughout this transit for you guys. Okay? Good luck. All right, we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? Mercury's going to be going through your 5th house, and it's going through a fellow sister Earth sign. So it's very friendly for you, Taurus. You'll be getting some trines at some point throughout this transit if you're a Taurus, Sun, Moon, or Rising. And for you guys, Mercury is directly tied to your 2nd house of money and values, as well as your 5th house of creativity, children, romance, and dating. So the predictions that I have for you throughout this transit, Taurus, is basically, this is about creative flow with precision. And maybe it's going to be boosting your hobbies, your romance, or children-related matters. And you might find that financial talks sharpen, but I would avoid trying to feel like you're being too much of a perfectionist when it comes to having fun or romance. Now, what you want to focus on throughout this transit, Taurus, is that you're going to be either getting organized or letting go of old ways of doing things in your 5th house. So this means that you might organize creative projects or budgets. You might also be really focused on, kind of getting back to an old project and completing it. There can also be your mind is on, romance and communication or creating, in a way that involves like language or writing. But what you want to do is release impulsive spending patterns by tackling your expenses and just budgeting how much money is going to creative projects, hobbies, children, that kind of stuff. You really want to watch for that and track those, expenses in an organized fashion, if at all possible. Okay, but it's good for dating. It's good for having fun. I hope you guys enjoy that transit, and I feel like it's going to be a burst of creative energy for a lot of you. All right, my Geminis and Gemini risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury, your chart ruler, ingressing into Virgo in your natal 4th house. Gemini, wherever Mercury is where you are. So Mercury is obviously tied to you, your body, your appearance, and your actions, as well as your 4th house through Virgo, which is about your home and your family. So I'm predicting for a lot of my Virgos and Geminis, but by Geminis is that there's a little bit of stress and tension right at the beginning of the ingress where, you wanting freedom with Uranus in your sign, or you wanting travel, or you wanting kind of your independence is coming into friction with some expectations for home, family, and domestic related things. So keep that in mind. I'm predicting that home and family communications can clarify throughout this transit. It is ideal for organizing your living spaces, planning moves, cleaning out closets and things connecting to your home. And it's also good for self-expression becoming more refined, especially with your emotions and how you're connecting with family. But emotional roots may surface for review, or there could be, going back home, reconnecting with family, or some big changes going on in your home space. Now, in terms of where or how to get organized or what you're letting go of, I highly recommend during this transit decluttering your house. Go through your kitchen, go through your cabinets, go through all that stuff, let go of things, get rid of it. If you have to go back home for whatever reason and take care of business or be with family, you can do that as well. But I would be letting go of like sentimental clutter by kind of sorting memories into keepsakes versus releases. So there are some things that you don't need to continue to hold on to. There's also some family karma, some family conversations, or some family relationships that you don't want to keep rehashing the same thing, right? Good luck. All right, we've got Cancer and Cancer rising. What's going on, Cancer? You're going to experience Mercury's ingress into Virgo in your natal second house. And well, Mercury loves being here and it loves being in this sign. So this is a really strong transit for you guys. Obviously, the third house is, kind of connected to the mind, short distance travel, anything connecting with your local community, vehicles, also writing, learning. And it's also associated with Gemini as well, which is more of like a subconscious nature, your dreams, your intuition, or things that are going on behind the scenes. So I'm predicting for my Cancer and Cancer risings that Mercury transiting through your third house is going to bring more mental agility, and peaks in learning, writing and local travel. Subconscious patterns can emerge for healing through more detailed introspection. Things like journaling or meditation can be really beneficial for you to get some of that insight. Now, in terms of how to get organized and what you're letting go of, we want to really refine communication skills. You might be studying notes and really discarding any vague thinking by journaling some of your daily insights. This can also be a time where, you're releasing any stress or anxiety through walking, exercise, biking, kind of getting around town. And you might notice that your intuition is really kicking off. Now, something else I want to remind you guys is that when we have the eclipses, particularly the solar eclipse, it is going to oppose that Mercury-Saturn aspect. So I think for like Cancer and Cancer risings, it's going to really represent where there may be a need to move, or there may be a need to have a conversation or tell somebody kind of what's on your mind or what you're thinking about. So this is a time to start thinking about how some of those conversations or how some of those kind of negotiations might potentially go later in the month. Okay. Good luck to you, my Cancer and Cancer risings. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mercury's transit throughout your second house. And obviously, this is connected to your financial security, your spending power, your resources, your self-esteem. And Mercury is tied to your money and your valuables and your resources. It's also tied to your 11th house, which deals with your financial goals, anything connecting to friendships, anything connecting to networks. And I'm predicting for you guys that this is going to be interesting for a number of ways. Obviously, the Cazimi around the 13th will be very prominent for you because it can be a major shift revolving around your money mindset. But I think a lot of this is connected to financial planning. So, budgeting, value assessments can kind of happen or sharpen. You can also be doing some networking that can bring about some significant shifts in how you're making money, and ideas can solidify, but there can be some critique going on when it comes to your self-worth, and you want to focus on doing this without the harshness, right? Especially as like the Sun and Mercury hitting the South Node, building yourself up, your values changing, and this is also about letting things go. So in the second house, I think that it's a really good time to be focusing on budgeting and like doing some audits of your possessions, releasing material attachments, and I would say donating or, giving away, unused items, or, helping others by, giving them things that you don't need, or kind of clearing out clutter can be really important here. You might also be kind of giving this to like communities or to friends. Like you might have things that friends need that you're willing to kind of give them that you're detaching from. But the eclipses, the Cazimi, all that stuff is going to be rather significant for you, Leo, because it's very much tied to releasing an old, outdated way of looking at your value system. And that means also that you're not selling yourself short. You're knowing your value in the process. Good luck. Virgo and Virgo rising, you guys have Mercury going through your sign. And if you're a Virgo rising, Mercury is going through your first house, which is very strong because it's your chart ruler. So when Mercury's on the move, wherever it is where you are. And Mercury in the first house is kind of giving you like the megaphone. The first house obviously deals with yourself, your identity, your appearance, your health. And it's also tied to your 11th house, which is your 10th house, which is associated with your career and your reputation. Now, right off the bat, when Mercury goes into your sign, keep in mind that it will square Uranus, so there could be a little friction with superiors, with work, or with your career, and there might be a sense of stress revolving around changes that's happening at work or with your schedule, okay? So there can be a little bit of tension right off the bat. But besides that, I think about eclipses in your sign, Mercury and the sun hitting the south node, going through your first house. There's a lot of change and kind of shedding old skin that's going to be happening for Virgo and Virgo risings throughout this transit and really like the next month. I'm predicting for many of you guys that where it can be positive for being in tune with your body, being in tune with kind of that connection of the mind and the body and the spirit, and having a morning routine, there's also some shifts that are going to come because it's going to hit the south node. So there's much more of a focus on personal identity and appearance, and maybe a bit of like a mental upgrade or feeling a little bit more responsible or a little bit more capable or independent. Yes, your communication skills within your career can really excel, but you want to watch out for that stress right off the bat on the second and the third, and also, being a little too self-critical, and use this to tap into some sense of heightened self-awareness. Now, for where you want to get organized or what you're letting go of, you're polishing your presentation and your appearance a little bit more. You're spending a little bit more time than usual to being more self-aware in how you're communicating or how you're coming across at work. Maybe you're updating resumes or you're updating your appearance in some way. And I think that if you're shedding outdated self-image right now and you're really focusing on like updating how you're communicating, connecting, or even your wardrobe or your personal brand, this can be a wonderful time to do that. And I think that that's also kind of tied to the eclipses that are happening in your sign and in your opposite sign of Pisces. When Mercury is hitting the south node, it's like where you need to be nicer to yourself, and the sun as well. And you might recognize and realize that, you can kind of get stuck in some of these like pits of like mental kind of like habits that you just can't release. And really what it's showing you is the benefit of the seventh house, where a counselor, a therapist, an astrologer, a helpful spouse, a healer, somebody is kind of giving you that feedback, and they're like reminding you that it's okay as you go through some of these changes. And I would be asking for help throughout this transit if you guys can swing it. Good luck. All right, Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to experience Mercury's transit through your natal 12th house. And obviously Mercury is tied to your ninth house of beliefs, learning, higher education, and travel, and the ninth house of the subconscious, what's hidden behind the scenes, and also it's connected to self-undoing. So Libras, the prediction that I have for this transit for you guys is that this is about inner thoughts turning introspective. Pay attention to your dreams. They could be significant, or what's kind of shifting for you subconsciously, or even in regards to your private spaces or bedrooms. This is also about aiding spiritual or subconscious work and refining what you're doing through quiet analysis. Planets will conjunct the south node, so it's like where you're over-worrying, overdoing it, or you're oversleeping, or all your bad habits are kind of coming out to play. I think that that's very likely for a lot of Libra risings, but it can also be very significant for meditation and self-reflection, reorganizing, anything kind of connecting to private offices or spaces or closets can be very therapeutic for you guys. And I think also this is like a huge shift revolving around productivity. So I think that, how and where to get organized is, meditating on some of your hidden patterns. And that could be your blockages, things you don't see, things that need to go, and really releasing escapist tendencies by structuring alone time a little bit more productively. And that's going to show you where not only you're getting more work done, but your schedule is kind of more in flow as you're going throughout some of these eclipses. This can also bring up foreign travel, intuitive insight, precognitive dreams, as well as anything connecting to health and healing behind the scenes. Good luck, Libra. For Scorpio and Scorpio rising, you guys are going to experience Mercury transiting through the sign of Virgo, going through your natal 11th house. Now, Mercury is traditionally tied to your 8th house, which is about joint finances and intimacy and kind of karmic entanglement, and your 11th house of friendships or anything connecting to networks or your goals. So Mercury going through this part of your sky actually makes things pretty social, and it brings up a lot of change and transformation to your goals, as well as networking and your social connections, friends, or groups. Something that I think about is that at least it's friendly. It's going to be making aspects to your Scorpio placement, so you have that kind of going for you. And that can be helpful as your chart ruler Mars is going through the 12th house, where you can be feeling like there is some internal pressure or kind of frustration. You might have friends that you can kind of connect with or you can kind of lean on. But obviously during this transit, group dynamics and some of your goals become more clear to you. And this is also about shared resource discussions and kind of like deepening, collaborations and projects and joint financing things with more detail. And in terms of how or where you're getting more so organized, this is about letting go of old ways when it's connecting to your networks. So it means that maybe you're creating new networks, you're joining groups, starting groups, or there could be changes revolving around your goals. And I think a lot of Scorpios are going to be letting go of toxic alliances by really reevaluating some of their friendships and whether or not they're really bringing them something beneficial and if they're helping them in the long run. And it could be very emotional, obviously, like the psychological stuff that can be coming up for you as friendships or friends are kind of changing. But I think it's really supporting you when it comes to, who you're becoming and also really focusing on your own personal joy throughout this process. Remember that Mercury will in conjunct or quincunx Pluto, which is one of your chart rulers, with its ingress, and it's going to be kind of showing you where friends can give you some insight to home and family changes that are kind of taking place. So you might have a friend that's giving you some really good insight throughout this period, and you might connect with old friends or people you haven't heard from along the way. Good luck, Scorpio. Sag and Sag rising, you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury going through the sign of Virgo, moving through your natal 10th house of career, reputation, and your professional kind of alliances. Now, Mercury is not just tied to your career, it's also tied to your 7th house, which is like your spouses, your partners, your clients, your marketplace, as well as any coaches or support and, people who kind of aid you along the way. So while Mercury is going through this part of the sky, obviously it is kind of getting whiplash all over the place. Because it's squaring Uranus in your 7th house off the bat, where there could be some changes going on with personal or professional relationships. But also it's going to be squaring your Sagittarius placements, and you will also see Mercury, a part of the eclipse cycle. So Sag, there's a lot of changes going on at home, relationships, and with your career. So just take a deep breath. I do think that Mercury going through the 10th house in its own sign is actually very strong for you because this is about your career and your public image and like your communication shining. So you're going to be seen a little bit more. There's going to be an opportunity to network and connect with people more, bring in clients or make some big announcements. But I feel like, where there is going to be some tension is that there's going to be some squares to your placements and also to Uranus. So partnerships really benefit from precise talks and like being very clear in relationships, both romantic and kind of professionally, like, where you're kind of taking the reins and being a little bit more assertive and really focused on some of your long-term goals. Now, I think for where and how to kind of get organized or what you're letting go of, you might be looking over your resume. You might be looking over some of your professional plans. Maybe you're going to realize throughout this transit that it's okay for you to kind of like discard aimless ambitions. And really you're going to be setting measurable milestones and making sure that the work that you're doing is aligning with where you're at in a relationship or where you're at in a home or family situation. This whole next month is going to be about balancing, what needs to change at work to kind of better support you home-wise or emotionally. So I think it's fine. You might notice that even though Mercury traditionally in your 10th house makes you very business-oriented, you're like, I'm going through the motions and I'm not as focused on that right now. I'm actually coming to terms with kind of walking away from some of those old storylines about who I am out in the world to embrace quieter, kind of softer home base, and maybe having to communicate with partners to kind of help you through that process, or a reading can help you, or working with a therapist can help you kind of adjust to some of these new responsibilities on the home front. Okay? Good luck. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you're going to experience Mercury going through the sign of Virgo in your natal 9th house. Now, Mercury is going to be going through a fellow sister Earth sign, so Capricorn, it'll be trining you at some point, so this is beneficial. And Mercury is obviously tied to your 9th house of higher education, travel, and your beliefs, as well as your 6th house, which deals with work, your schedule, your habits, and your routine. So Capricorn, I'm predicting for you throughout this transit, there can also be a huge focus on education, a huge focus on learning or on traveling. There can be philosophical or travel ideas that are kind of coming up, and you're wanting to kind of ground these plans out. And it's possible that work routines like link to broader learning or travel. But as for what you need to be aware of, I think is, Mercury is going to meet the South Node. It's going to oppose Saturn, your chart ruler. And what that's going to kind of be bringing up for you, I think, during eclipse season is that what you're working on is some kind of study or trip itinerary. And it might mean that you're having to release religious beliefs by researching diverse perspectives. There could be legal matters coming up, document matters that are coming up, travel restrictions and delays at some point. And you can avoid some of this potentially if you're really focusing on clear, concise communication and like listening to your intuition when it comes to navigating education, traveling, or learning of some kind. And there may be a sense of like returning back to or visiting places that you've been before, or a significant pivot that's happening with your career or your beliefs in general. Okay? Good luck. I hope it is a good one for you guys. All right, we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You guys are going to experience Mercury's transit through the sign of Virgo in your natal 8th house. Now, this isn't a sign that in conjuncts or quincunxes you. Some of the things that are coming over the next month with the Mercury transits, but also the eclipses, can kind of come out of left field, so it can feel like it's like out of the blue. Obviously, Mercury is tied to your 8th house of joint finances, karma, intimacy, and change, but it's also tied to your 5th house of creativity, children, romance, and taking chances. So as Mercury is going through your 8th house, it's going to go through a transformation. And when it's in this particular sign, it's going to be about intimate or financial conversations, and really getting deep and kind of analyzing where you're tied to other people, creatively, romantically, emotionally, financially. And it's possible that creative secrets can be revealed and there could be some kind of significant transformation in your finances or how you create, or even with romantic partners. It can involve children or joint finances. And in terms of like how or where you're getting organized, I think Mercury going through here, the eclipse going through here, is about dealing with debt or investments, okay? So you could be tracking your debt, trying to pay stuff off, organizing things, looking at where you're investing money, and maybe letting go of secretive fears by documenting things connecting to shared resources and getting more insight and information on how that process is kind of, unfolding, so that way you can feel more financially kind of secure. Obviously, the eclipses are going to be very much tied to, the finances for you guys. And I think a lot of you guys have been either investing in creative hobbies, projects, self-employment, or maybe it's been investments in the market or even your own business, and you're wanting to see how this is playing out and if you're actually getting ahead and not just feeling like you're scraping by. Saturn's back in your 2nd house of money and income, and Mercury will oppose that. So there's going to be a lot of what you're willing to pay for versus what you're willing to get, and making sure that other people are kind of covering their expenses and you're not the one left holding the bag. Good luck. We've got Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys are going to have Mercury transiting the sign of Virgo, moving through your natal 7th house in your opposite sign. Mercury is not just tied to relationships, but it's things like clients, your marketplace, your therapist, and even your spouse, as well as your home and your family, your emotions, and the past. So this is interesting for you, Pisces, because we're going to have a lunar eclipse in your sign on the 7th. We have Mercury and a bunch of movement through your 7th house of relationships before you have a solar eclipse in your 7th house on the 21st. And obviously there are some big things changing with relationship dynamics and how that's impacting your home and your family. I think for a lot of you guys, the themes for this transit is like partnerships and contracts can get very detailed, but there can also be a sense of detaching or tying up loose ends, or maybe feeling like you're sick of people being very critical or kind of like scrutinizing you. And it's possible that a lot of this kind of relational stuff is coming up revolving around family relationships or moving or kind of changes that are happening unexpectedly in like a domestic sense. And it can be about kind of dealing with family relational issues too. So it doesn't mean that it has to be your spouse. It could be your siblings. It could be things connecting to, extended relatives. And I really feel like it's very personal for you because it's going to be opposing you by sign, and then also highlighting as we get into the eclipses, Saturn in opposition to a solar eclipse here, where it's going to be showing you either where there's limitations and boundaries or a great divide between you and another person. The question is can you actually outgrow some of these issues? Can you work through it? Or is it time to kind of cut your losses and like let some people go? So I think really this is about focusing on relationship agreements or how you can connect with other people, or kind of coming back around to reconnecting with clients, or even going back to therapy if that's something you want to do, and releasing kind of unbalanced dynamics by trying to kind of negotiate clear boundaries. And if people can't comply, then you're going to cut them loose. You'll see that be the theme later in the month. But for the most part, if you're single and you're hoping to mingle or you want to meet somebody, this can be an opportune time to connect with people. Just know with some of the contacts of the South Node, you might be hearing from people from the past. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Pisces. All right, guys. Well, this is going to be quite the week. Take a breath. Like I said, as we're kind of wrapping up this forecast, remember that Mercury's transit through Virgo is really here to help us feel more empowered, to refine, but more importantly, to release. And it's setting the stage for the eclipse magic that we're going to be feeling this September. Trust the process, get organized, be open to kind of letting go of some of these old, outdated ways of being. Remember that organization leads to liberation for all of us this month. So I hope this is helpful. If you find it helpful, definitely give me a thumbs up and consider sharing my work. Subscribe if you want to see more videos, and leave me comments below and let me know what's manifesting for you during this particular eclipse week. I look forward to seeing you guys. I'll be giving you more info. Remember, there's lots of content on the channel to help you get through the eclipses and all of these aspects. So stay subscribed, and I will catch you guys all here live for my Friday readings for that lunar eclipse in Pisces. Until next time, I hope you enjoy your week. I'll see all of you guys here very soon. Take care.